Have you ever been in that argument? You know the one. You think a movie is an absolute masterpiece, your friend thinks it's total garbage, and boom, you're off. So why do we do that? Why do we argue about beauty as if it's a fact, something we can actually be right or wrong about?
Okay, so to get to the bottom of this, here's our game plan. We'll start with the puzzle itself, then look at how the philosopher Immanuel Kant broke it all down. We'll uncover his really clever solution, see how that defines this whole idea of the aesthetic, and finally, bring it all home and talk about why this actually matters in our everyday lives.
All right, let's start with something we've all experienced. You hear a song, and it just hits you, right in the soul. Or you see a painting that literally stops you in your tracks. What's the first thing you want to do? It's not just to enjoy it by yourself, is it? No, you want to grab someone and say, "You have to see this!" And that right there is where our puzzle begins.
I mean, this is the real mystery, isn't it? If taste was just a simple preference, kind of like liking chocolate ice cream, we wouldn't argue about it. You'd never tell someone they're wrong for liking vanilla. But when it comes to art, to beauty, we act like our personal feelings should be a universal law. We don't just share our opinion, we kind of expect, and sometimes we even demand, that other people agree with us.
And this really breaks it down. On one side, you've got what you could call a judgment of agreementness. Saying a wine is nice is basically just a report on your own private sensation. It's all about you. But on the other side, when you call a symphony beautiful, you're making a totally different kind of claim. You're talking as if beauty is a real quality of the music itself, and you're insisting that everyone else should recognize it too.
So the great philosopher Immanuel Kant was absolutely fascinated by this paradox. He argued that for any judgment of taste to be legit, it has to satisfy two conditions that on the surface seem to completely contradict each other. Let's dig into them.
Okay, first, the judgment has to be subjective. All this means is that it has to come from you. It's based on a personal feeling of pleasure. You can't prove something is beautiful with a ruler or a scientific experiment. You just have to feel it. This part seems pretty obvious, right? It's your experience. But then, and here's the twist, we have the second condition, universality. Sometimes philosophers call this normativity because it's like you're setting a norm or a standard. When we say this is beautiful, we're not just saying, I like this. We're making a claim we think should be valid for everybody. We're saying that other people ought to feel the same way we do. We're speaking with what Kant called a universal voice.
So you see the problem, right? How on earth is this possible? How can a judgment be based entirely on my own private personal feeling, but at the very same time make a legitimate demand on every single other person? This is the big question in the philosophy of art, and figuring it out is the key to why we talk about beauty the way we do.
Yeah, Kant's solution to this is just so clever. He said that the special kind of pleasure we get from beauty is totally unique. He called it disinterested pleasure, and it's the secret ingredient that lets something be both subjective and universal at the same time.
So what in the world does disinterested mean here? It just means the pleasure is completely free from any personal desire. Think about it. When you find a sunset beautiful, you don't want to own it or eat it or use it for anything. The pleasure you feel isn't based on some personal need you have, and feeling it doesn't create a new desire in you. It's just a pure, contemplative kind of enjoyment.
And this really comes into focus when you think about what this kind of pleasure isn't. The pleasure of eating amazing food is interested. It's tied up in your desire for, well, food. The pleasure of a well-made tool is interested because you want it to be useful. Even the pleasure of a moral act is interested because we desire to be good people. All of these are tangled up with our own personal wants and needs. But aesthetic pleasure, Kant says, is in a category all by itself.
And here's the masterstroke. Because this pleasure is disinterested, because it's totally free from all our personal, quirky, individual desires, we can assume it's based on something we all share, just by being human, our basic mental wiring for thought and imagination. And if that pleasure comes from this shared human foundation, well, then we can legitimately expect or even demand that other people should be able to feel it too.
This whole idea, this subjective but universal judgment, is incredibly powerful. It doesn't just explain words like beautiful and ugly. It actually gives us a framework for understanding the entire family of words we use when we talk about art and nature. So one way to think about it is like a little hierarchy. At the very top, you have the big verdicts, beautiful or ugly. These are the final judgments on aesthetic quality. But then underneath that, you have all these wonderfully descriptive words we use, like elegant or dramatic or even dumpy. And the key thing to get is that these words aren't totally separate ideas. They're really just descriptions of the specific ways something manages to be beautiful or ugly. Elegance is just a particular flavor of beauty.
Okay, so why does any of this matter outside of a philosophy class? Because this whole structure is the invisible scaffolding for so much of our cultural life. This isn't just some abstract mind game. It has real-world consequences, from the playlist on your phone to the most famous museums in the world.
When you really get down to it, our whole aesthetic experience is built on this tension. It's a constant negotiation, a balancing act between our most private, inner feelings and the belief that we're all part of a shared world, where some things really are more beautiful or more profound than others. It's why we have art critics and the Oscars and best of lists. We're all trying to figure this out together.
So ultimately, when we argue with a friend about a movie, we're not just being stubborn. We're taking part in a deeply human ritual. We're implicitly defending the idea that correctness in taste is actually possible, that our feelings can be appropriate or inappropriate to the thing we're looking at, and that beauty is something more than just a random, relative whim. We're acting on the belief that some judgments are just better than others.
So the next time you engage with art, whether it's clicking a like button, writing a review, or declaring something a masterpiece, just remember this whole fascinating philosophical drama playing out. You're making a statement that is, at the same time, deeply personal and profoundly public. So what is it? A simple preference or a universal demand? That's something to think about.